Hello and welcome to the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. We have a returning guest today, Shemika Renee, and she's a historical performer. This is in celebration of Black History Month. Welcome again.
Thank you so much for having me back.
So I told you to come back when you were going to be performing, when you had your play together. And it seems like we've got that together now. So tell me what's going on.
So from February 16th to March 3rd, which is actually Harriet Tubman's birthday, I will be doing a three weekend run at the Greenbelt Arts Center. And it'll be Fridays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. and Sundays at 3 p.m. as a matinee. And then in April 12th, 13th, and 14th, I will be doing the show again at the Port Tobacco Players in La Plata, Maryland. The title of the show is Miss Stories, Living History. And I did the show before February 2019, and it was a success. People really enjoyed it, and then COVID hit, so I didn't have the opportunity to do the show again. And last year, talking to some of the theaters, and with everything opening back up, it was the opportunity to bring it back. So I decided to change it a little bit to bring people back who've already seen it, to make them want to come see it again. So now it's broken up into 3 chapters.
Okay, so let's remind people exactly what the play is about.
So it's a one-woman show, and I portray a character named Ms. Story. If you come to the show, you'll find out why that's her name. And she brings to life history. History is about people and their relationships and their connections to each other. History in schools is taught mathematically. It's taught by the numbers with a timeline. How many people were affected, how much money was made or lost, how much land was acquired, but you don't find out about the relationships of people, the people who knew each other that if you memorize their names for a test, you don't realize the connection that Marquis de Lafayette from France, who was in King Louis XIV's court, was the same Lafayette who was instrumental in the American Revolution. If you're familiar with Hamilton, that Lafayette is the same person back and forth.
Who are the characters, some of the characters that you will be portraying?
I have a character called the Ancestor who will represent all the people who are not in the history books, the stories of the average person, my ancestors, your ancestors, the ancestors of your viewers, who didn't do anything that was historically significant, but their significance is that they were people and that they lived. They had hopes and dreams and families and heartaches. And so I want to honor them and their stories by performing as an ancestor. I also have Harriet Tubman, who will be making an appearance because the show ends on her birthday. I will also be doing Sojourner Truth, and a special project that I've been working on for a number of years. I figured this is the best time to bring her back to life. I will be doing Sally Hemmings.
Sally Hemmings.
Yes.
And explain to folks the importance of Sally Hemmings.
So people may be aware that Sally Hemmings was an enslaved woman who bore 6 children for Thomas Jefferson. What a lot of people may not realize is that Sally Hemmings was the half-sister of Thomas Jefferson's original wife. She passed away, and then after her passing was when Thomas Jefferson started having children with Sally Hemmings. There's been a lot of controversy in the media and for decades about whether or not the children she had were actually Thomas Jefferson's children. There has been speculation on the nature of their relationship. But what's important to remember is even though we look back on that relationship through the lens of the eyes of somebody in 2024, we still have to remember that she was enslaved. She was 14 years old when she was brought to France with him and his family. When she went to France, she was free because slavery was illegal. She was paid for her work. And then, for whatever reason, she came back to Virginia with him. And at the age of 16 was when she had her first child by Thomas Jefferson. And so that will be handled delicately and responsibly, but also compassionately, because it is a family-friendly show. And we need to remember that we weren't there. So we do not know the true nature of their relationship, but we do know that she was property. She had no other options. She had no other suitors, no other gentlemen callers that she could interact with. She was his property. She could not leave without permission. He was in his 40s and she was a young teenage girl.
That's what I was getting ready to say, and how common those relationships were back then.
Yes.
And even though she was free in France, what was she going to do if she stayed there? The slave life was
Right.
the life she knew.
Right. We don't know what skills or abilities that she had. We do know that her older brother James was also there. He was learning to be a chef. He also went back to America and was promised his freedom if he taught another one of their brothers, Peter, how to be as good of a chef as he was. So I don't want to give everything away because she will be a part of the show, but I want to bring her story to life because it's a very complex story, and a lot of people don't know. They know that she was enslaved by Thomas Jefferson, but they don't know the family background. They don't know that her mother had been enslaved by Thomas Jefferson's wife's father, and that was how Sally Hemings was born.
That is so messy.
Yes. Thomas Jefferson received Sally Hemings, her mother, and her siblings through the dowry of being married to his wife, Martha. Martha was 25 years old when Sally Hemings was born, and she was born after her father had been widowed 3 times, and then he started having children with his enslaved woman, Sally's mother.
What are some of the other characters that you're going to explore?
I will be bringing back Bessie Coleman. She was the first African-American woman and indigenous woman to receive her pilot's license. In fact, she received it before Amelia Earhart by 6 months. And I'll be bringing Mahalia Jackson and a few others. So each night, let me rephrase that, each chapter will have 6 people from history and then my original character, Ms. Story. So if you want to see chapter 1 and chapter 3, you will get a different experience. If you want to see only chapter 2, you will still receive the full story. The structure of the story is the same. The purpose of the show is the same, to bring to life these people so that we can see that they were more than just pictures on the internet or words or small passages in a textbook or in the encyclopedia, but that they had lives and relationships and families. There's a character that I'm going to be talking about whose brother-in-law was one of the original lawyers for the Dred Scott case. He passed away before that was finalized, but that was her brother-in-law. But she was born enslaved, but her brother-in-law was white.
How do you prepare to play these characters? What is your process? Do you do research? How do you prepare?
Sometimes it's fashion driven because I may see a clothing item from a particular era that I want the experience of wearing. And so I will look and find people in that time period who wore those clothing. Often, the historical figures that I choose, I have a connection with in some way. Bessie Coleman was an aviator. I was in the military. I had the opportunity to fly an airplane. It was not my forte, and that was why I was not a pilot in the Air Force. Elizabeth Keckley was a seamstress. I am a costumer. Sally Hemings was a mother. I am a mother. And I find those connections with those women to be able to relate to them, to see their story through their eyes. what experiences do I have that mirror theirs to make telling their story more realistic, instead of it seeming as if I'm just memorizing a bunch of words or memorizing a speech, but to put some meat on the bones, so to speak. I will read autobiographies of them if I can find them, or biographies. Some of the research that I've done for Sally Hemmings is finding the biography of Jefferson's daughters, where it talks about his two daughters with Martha and his daughter Harriet, ironically, with Sally Hemmings. I will look up different quotes that they had. There is one historical figure, Cathay Williams, who was the first and only woman Buffalo Soldier. And I found an interview online that was done with her before her passing. And so I took a lot of that interview to create the monologue. Whenever I can use their words, I try to use their words, because their words are important. And they spoke their words much better than I can. And so a lot of times our history books and history classes don't delve into what they actually said or why they said what they said. Another goal of mine within the show is to dispel historical myths. There are a lot of myths that are out there about some of our historical figures, and things may be attributed to them that they did not say or they did not do, and I address those. Sometimes I break the fourth wall. It makes it more interesting. So the show is interactive. I will talk out to the audience. I will ask them questions. I would like responses from those. I remember.
But before we go there, what do you think about the way states are trying to change how history is taught, trying to minimize things like slavery?
It's discouraging, and it comes from a place of generational guilt and generational shame. And I use the terms generational because when you break it down by race and saying white guilt or black shame, people's defenses go up and you lose them. But by saying generational guilt and generational shame, it shows you how long it's been going. We've been taught not to talk about slavery. We've been taught not to say the word slave, to treat it as if it is a profane word, like it's a 4-letter word, but slavery is 7 letters. And it is a profane act to own someone, to have them in bondage, to take away their rights. Within the museum and the educational community, we are trying to change the language. We want to say that someone was enslaved. Say she was an enslaved woman, he was an enslaved man. They were enslaved people. Because just by calling them only slave, it reduces them to a noun that doesn't have anything else to do with who they truly are or who they truly were. James Hemmings was a chef. He was a renowned, incredible chef. But just saying he was a slave doesn't say what his abilities were. People were kidnapped from their countries in Africa and brought to this nation to build it up because the people who kidnapped them wanted power and they wanted to dominate someone because they felt weak and helpless in their previous circumstances. And we've been taught or given images of our enslaved ancestors as being slothful or unable to be taught. But they came from one country. They had to learn an entire different language, being separated from their family and their friends and their villages and their tribes, dealing with the trauma of being abused, having their children taken away, having their parents taken away, losing their names, their identity, their culture. But they were unlearned. They were unable to be taught. But this country was built off of their stolen labor. So how are they unable to be educated but built the White House? How are they unable to be educated but created many of the inventions that we enjoy and need today to continue to live.
You just remarked or just talked about the fact that you research your characters using books or the internet. What do you feel about books, especially books that deal with people of color, are being banned?
I find the books that are being banned because they don't want what's in the books to be explored and understood. And the ones that are being banned are the ones that I think we should be trying to read, because why are you trying to ban it? Either you've not read it and you don't know what it's really about, or you do know what it's about and you don't want anyone else to know. Power is in education. Power is in knowledge. And if you can keep knowledge out of the hands of a certain group of people, then you can keep power over that group of people. And there are some people who may not be inclined to enjoy lectures. I don't enjoy lectures. That's not my learning style. Some people don't enjoy reading books or reading textbooks or reading novels or autobiographies or nonfiction, but they do enjoy theater. They do enjoy being entertained. So I invite people, come, let me entertain you, but you're also going to learn something. At least I hope you learn something. Either remind you of something that you heard maybe years ago that you had forgotten, or dispel a myth that you grew up your entire life thinking was true and it wasn't, or it was almost right but not quite right. And that is what I hope people gain and gather from the show.
Well, I think if you are willing to do so, can you show us one of your characters?
I knew you were going to ask me that. One of the easiest to bring to life right now is Harriet Tubman. And she's one of the historical figures that I use to break the fourth wall, especially if I'm at a school. I had an experience where I was in an auditorium full of elementary school students, and there were two little boys that were sitting right in the front, and they were just giggling and talking and not paying any attention. And so this is how I responded to them. Now, you all may know that I was born in Maryland. I was born Araminta Ross. My father's name was Ben and my mother's name was Rit. Rit was short for Harriet. And as I continued to grow older, I was responsible for tending to the little children. And that was a headache in and of itself, because the babies would be crying, and if they started crying, then I would get in trouble. So I was trying to keep them quiet. And as I got older, some of my responsibilities began to change. And I remember one time we were at the Bucktown store, and one of the other slaves wanted to run off, and the overseer was trying to get us to stop him. It wasn't my business that he wanted to run off. I wanted to run off myself. I always wanted to be free. So I just stepped out the way. And the overseer picked up a rock or a weight or something, I didn't see it, and threw it at the other slave. And of course, the overseer didn't have no good aim and hit me in the head instead. For 3 days, they thought I was going to be dead, but I finally come to. But while I was in my deep sleep, I kept having these visions. I kept feeling that God was telling me he had plans for me. He had a work for me to do. I remember thinking to myself, well, Lord, I'm doing enough work as it is. What other work you got in mind for me to do? But he wanted me to set my people free. Now, around this time, I had married a man named John Tubman, and I was a grown-up then, and I was tired of being called Minty. That's what everybody wanted to call me, because my name was Araminta. So I took on my mama's name, Harriet, and became Harriet Tubman. Well, I finally escaped and made my way to freedom, but my heart wasn't settled because I wanted my family to be free too. And so I came back down for them. I had discovered this group of people that was willing to help folks get to their freedom, called the Underground Railroad. Now, it wasn't really a railroad, it wasn't really no train, but that's what they called it. It was a secret society. So as I gathered everybody up to try to bring them together, to tell them what our plan is, they got to listen real carefully. Now, at this point, this is when the two little boys are really just talking and laughing and not paying any attention. And so I redirect my attention to them and say, now you two right here gonna have to be quiet, because if we can't take y'all laughing and giggling and talking like that, we gonna get caught for sure. And both of them just got real quiet. I said, yes, ma'am. And the teachers in the background were laughing because they were trying to figure out how they were gonna get them to be quiet without interrupting the show. And that's what I mean by interacting with the audience and trying to get their attention, bringing them back in. I wasn't trying to embarrass them or frighten them, but I wanted them to know, I see you, but it's getting to the good part. Let's try to pay attention. And they were fully engaged. When I did the show in 2019 and I was starting the show off and I asked a question to the audience, and it was rhetorical. I was not expecting a response. I said, are you all here to steal the tobacco? And there was a gentleman off to the side. One of my close friends, I didn't realize he was even there. He said, yeah, we're all here to take the tobacco. And I turned my head and there were gasps in the audience because they weren't expecting anybody to respond to me. And I looked at him and I said, well, sir, we have special ways of dealing with folks that steal the tobacco. I don't think you want to cross me. And he said, no, ma'am, I don't. So that's what I try to bring to the show, is interact with the audience, bring history to life, let them see the humanity of history, the humanity of these historical figures that we've read about, that we think we know about, that we barely have heard about, and to give them honor and respect for being people.
Who's your favorite? Is it Harriet?
She is one of my favorites, but I think my favorite is all of them. Because I find, as I said before, I find a part of their life that mirrors my own, so that I have that connection with them. And Harriet is one of the figures I've been doing the longest. I've been doing her for 20 years. So when I put on that coat, when I pick up that lantern, when I drop my voice, it's like slipping on a second skin. Putting on Bessie Coleman, I feel like Queen Bess, like they called her. When I put on the choir robe to be Mahalia Jackson, I feel the love and the strength that she exuded, the love that she tried to show her audiences, her neighbors, her friends, her family. There was a reason why she sang the national anthem for President John F. Kennedy's inauguration, and why she sang Precious Lord for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at his funeral. And those of us who missed their time period in life because of our age, and the younger generation won't have the experience unless they can find a YouTube or a video or a movie of these historical figures to see them in their element. And I feel this is an opportunity to tell their story and to show our younger generations our history, and that we can be proud of it. Yes, Black History Month is coming up, and I look at Black History Month like a Mother's Day or a birthday or a religious holiday. It's a time to take a special observance, to put a little extra in what you do. But history is 365, 366 this year.
So, yeah, really? So you create the costumes yourself?
Yes. Yes, I do.
And where do you find them? Where do you?
Well, for this show, actually, I have help from Port Tobacco Players. They've lent me a few costumes, but usually I create everything on my own, and I'll go to the thrift store and I'll know the time period that I'm looking for. I will know the accessories that I am searching for, and then I will take a piece and repurpose it, upcycle it, give it a brand new life, so to speak, and tie the past with the present to recreate those outfits.
Now, you've been doing this for a while. Let's
Yes.
talk a little bit about how you started.
When my oldest, who was in kindergarten, first started and I wanted to be involved with his schooling, I told his teacher I can perform as any historical figure and tell their story in first person. And she said, oh, that's a wonderful idea. I will take you up on that. And I thought she was being kind. And a couple of weeks later, she reached out and asked me if I was still willing to come in, and I said yes. And I'm thinking she wants me to do Harriet Tubman or Sojourner Truth or Rosa Parks, and she asked me to do Johnny Appleseed. So I put a pot on my head and went to the school and performed as Johnny Appleseed. And the children laughed when they saw me come in with my bare feet and the pot on my head. And I explained to them that Johnny Appleseed, whose real name was John Chapman, was a white man, and I clearly am not. But they said, you're wearing a pot on your head, we love you. And a career was born.
So give us the details. We just have a few minutes left. So give us the details of your performances again.
So it will be February 16th through March 3rd on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Friday and Saturdays are at 8 p.m. Sundays a 3 p.m. matinee with a talk back afterwards where the audience can ask me questions at the Greenbelt Arts Center. You can go to their website and purchase tickets. And then in April, for those in Southern Maryland, I will be at the Port Tobacco Players in La Plata, Maryland, April 12th, 13th, and 14th.
Are you excited?
I'm very excited. I'm nervous and a little bit stressed, but I'm very excited.
And this is a dream come true.
It is.
Because last time you said, I'm going to do that. And here it is, 1 year later, it has manifested for you.
Yes.
How does that feel?
The Lord is truly blessing me, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to share the talents that He has given me. I'm thankful for my team, the people who believe that I can do this and who've given me the gentle nudges and pushes that I need. Ricky Lacewell Howie is my director, and she's wonderful. She's taken over for my previous director who has passed on, but we are very, very excited to bring this show to Maryland.
And in wrapping up today, I want to assure you that all of the ancestors that you portray, they're watching. You've been watching the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Shemika Renee, come back again.
I will. Thank you so much.
Everybody have a great day.